The Runaway and the Storm. The desert wind howled like a living thing, whipping sand across the endless horizon. Clara Dalton rode hard, the hem of her wedding dress torn and stained with dust. Her veil had long since blown away, carried into the storm like a ghost of the life she'd just abandoned. Behind her lay Red Hollow, a small frontier town where her father had promised her hand to Marshal Kane Dalton, a wealthy rancher with power, land, and a cold, cruel smile. She'd stood at the altar trembling, not from joy but from terror. So she ran. Now, lost beneath a burning sky and a rising wall of sand, she wondered if she'd just traded one kind of death for another. The storm came fast. The wind roared. Her horse panicked, rearing violently. "Easy, boy! Easy!" she cried, but it was too late. The animal bolted, the reins slipping from her grasp. In moments, she was alone, stumbling blindly through a storm that swallowed sound and light alike. She fell to her knees, coughing, choking on sand. Her heart pounded. The world tilted. Then everything went dark. When Clara woke, she was lying near a campfire under a makeshift tent of canvas and rope. A man knelt beside her, checking her pulse, his face half-shadowed by the flickering light. "You're safe," he said softly. His voice was low, calm, the kind that steadied storms. "I found you half-buried out there. Another hour and you'd have been gone." She blinked, vision clearing. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with wind-burned skin and eyes the color of the desert sky before rain. A revolver rested near his hand, close enough to reach, but not pointed at her. "Who are you?" she managed. "Name's Luke Dalton," he said. "I've got a small ranch a few miles east. You're welcome to rest till you can travel." The name hit her like a bullet. Dalton. Her blood ran cold. But she said nothing. It could be coincidence. The West was wide and cruel. He noticed her silence. "You were out there in a wedding dress. You runnin' from something?" Her throat tightened. "From someone." He nodded slowly, not pressing. "You don't have to tell me. Folks run for all kinds of reasons." For the next few days, Clara stayed in Luke's small cabin on the edge of the desert. He was quiet, kind, and solitary, the opposite of his brother. He cooked simple meals, spoke little, and never once asked her real name. But every time she looked at him, a strange warmth stirred inside her. Safety. Peace. Something she'd never felt before. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, she found him mending a saddle outside. The silence between them was easy now. "You saved my life," she said softly. "I don't even know how to thank you." He looked up, smiling faintly. "Don't thank me. You just looked like someone who needed savon." His eyes held hers, and for a moment the world stopped turning. She felt her pulse quicken, a dangerous, beautiful ache blooming inside her. She didn't know yet that fate had one more storm waiting. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Past. The next morning brought sunlight and a chill wind. Clara helped Luke with chores, though her hands weren't made for hard work. He noticed the blisters forming on her palms, but said nothing, only handed her gloves and smiled. Over the days that followed, their bond deepened. He taught her to ride again, to shoot a rifle, to listen to the desert wind and know when a storm was coming. At night, they sat by the fire, telling stories in quiet voices. She never mentioned the name Kane Dalton. And Luke never mentioned that he had a brother. But secrets have a way of clawing to the surface. One evening, a rider appeared on the ridge, dust rising behind his horse. Luke went tense the instant he saw him. "That's trouble," he muttered. The rider stopped by the corral, dismounted, and strode toward the house. His boots crunched against the dry earth. "Luke," he said with a grin that made Clara's blood run cold. "Didn't expect to find you playin' nursemaid out here." Kane Dalton. Her heart seized. He hadn't changed. The same sharp jaw, the same eyes that could cut like glass. Luke stepped forward, blocking Kane's path. "What are you doin' here?" Kane smirked. "Heard a runaway bride took a tumble near my land. Figured I'd track her down. Ain't every day your fiancé rides off before the vows are done." Luke froze. "You're what?" Kane's gaze shifted to Clara, and the truth fell between them like a hammer. Luke turned slowly toward her. "Clara." Tears burned her eyes. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know who you were." Kane chuckled darkly. "Didn't know, huh? That's rich. My own brother, stealin' my bride." Luke's fists clenched. "She wasn't yours. You can't own a person, Kane." "Oh, I owned everything that mattered," Kane sneered. "And you just had to ruin it." He drew his gun. The world went still. Luke stepped in front of Clara, his hand resting on his holster. "Put it down, brother. You don't want this." "Move," Kane growled, "or I'll put you in the ground." For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then, a flash of steel, a thunder of gunfire. When the smoke cleared, Kane lay on the ground, clutching his arm. Luke's bullet had hit true, but not to kill. Luke's face was pale, his chest rising fast. "Go," he told Kane quietly. "You're done." Kane glared at them both, hatred burning in his eyes. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "Both of you." He mounted his horse and rode off into the setting sun, a dark shadow against the gold. Clara turned to Luke, trembling. "I didn't want this. I didn't want to hurt you." He shook his head, pain in his eyes. "You didn't. The truth just came late, that's all." "But you hate me now," she whispered. He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, "No. I just don't know how to stop lovin' you." Her tears fell then, not from shame, but from something deeper. Because she realized she loved him too. The storm within, full long version. The days that followed were quiet but heavy, like the still air before another storm. Luke worked the land in silence, his eyes always drifting toward the horizon, where the sun bled into the desert. Clara could see the restlessness in him, the guilt that came with every sunrise. He'd killed his brother to protect her, even though Kane had left him no choice. But Luke was a man who carried the weight of every bullet he'd ever fired. At night, when the wind howled, she heard him whisper Kane's name like a prayer for forgiveness. Clara tried to reach him. She cooked, cleaned, tended to his wound, and sat beside him by the fire. But for a long time, he barely spoke. The man who had saved her from the desert storm now stood lost inside one of his own making. One evening, she finally broke the silence. "You can't keep blamin' yourself," she said softly, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "He made his choices, Luke. You did what you had to." Luke looked up slowly, eyes tired, voice low. "I shot my own blood, Clara. Don't matter why. That ain't a thing a man forgets." She crossed the room and knelt before him, taking his hand. "You didn't lose your soul that day," she whispered. "You saved it." The words hung in the air like a candle in darkness. He looked at her then, really looked. And in her eyes, he didn't see pity. He saw truth. For the first time, he let the tears come. That night, as lightning cracked over the desert, he held her close in the quiet, their hearts beating to the same rhythm as the rain. They didn't speak of the past anymore, only of what might still come. Weeks later, the spring rains returned, rare and cleansing. The parched soil drank deeply, and wildflowers began to bloom where once there had only been dust. Life, somehow, found a way back. Luke built a new fence, repaired the barn, and took to smiling again. Small, quiet smiles that Clara learned to treasure. She had stayed. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she couldn't imagine leaving. One morning, she woke to find him on the porch, carving something into the wood beam. When she stepped closer, she saw what it was, a small carving of 2 letters, L plus C, bound together by a heart. She smiled. "Didn't think you were the sentimental kind, cowboy." He chuckled softly. "Guess you don't know me as well as you thought." She reached up, brushing her thumb over his cheek. "Maybe I'm still learnin'." He caught her hand, kissed her palm gently. "Then keep learnin'. I've got time now." Their laughter mingled with the soft hum of the wind, a melody of peace and new beginnings. But the desert always remembers. One afternoon, a rider came down the trail. Luke's body tensed until the man tipped his hat and handed him a letter sealed in dust. It was from Kane's ranch foreman, an old friend who had stayed behind to tend the land. It said the Dalton name was cleared, the debts paid, and the feud ended. Kane had left no heirs, no will, but Luke was still blood. The ranch now belonged to him. Luke folded the letter slowly. "The land's mine now," he said, voice distant. Clara watched him carefully. "What will you do?" He turned toward her, eyes softening. "What I should have done all along. Make it a place worth livin' in." Months passed. The Dalton ranch came alive again. Fences mended, fields planted, cattle grazing under endless skies. Clara's laughter echoed through the valley, and for the first time in years, Luke's heart felt light. He built her a small garden by the porch, roses, wildflowers, and a little tree that grew stubbornly against the wind. Each time it bloomed, he'd touch its petals and say, "You made this place gentle, Clara." One golden evening, she told him she was expecting. For a moment, he said nothing, only stared at her, his face caught between disbelief and joy. Then he pulled her into his arms and whispered, "Guess the storm really did bring me something worth livin' for." A year later, the Dalton ranch was no longer silent. The cries of a newborn echoed through its walls, followed by laughter, Clara's laughter, light and free. Luke stood by the door, holding the tiny bundle against his chest, eyes full of wonder. "She's got your eyes," Clara said softly from the bed. He smiled down at the child. "And your stubborn jaw." Clara chuckled weakly. "Heaven help her, then." They named the baby Maggie, after Clara's late mother. And as Luke rocked her in his arms, he realized the world no longer felt empty. Every wound, every scar, they had led him here. When the child took her first steps, the desert wind carried her laughter far across the plains. The same land that had nearly killed Clara now held their love, their family, their future. Sometimes, at sunset, Luke would ride out to the ridge where the storm had once nearly taken her. He'd stand there quietly, hat in hand, watching the horizon. And when Clara came to stand beside him, he'd take her hand and say, "You know, I used to think storms only destroyed." She'd smile gently. "And now?" He'd look at her, the woman who had changed everything, and whisper, "Now I know they deliver." That night, as the stars lit the desert sky, Clara lay beside him, whispering, "The storm brought me to you, Luke. And you brought me home." He kissed her softly, the desert wind curling around them like a blessing. The storm that once separated them had become the very thing that bound them forever. And beneath the endless western sky, The runaway bride and the drifter finally found what every lost soul in the desert searches for. Not gold, not glory, but peace.